The following program is presented to you by the Hope Channel Network.
Today on Between the Lines, we're going to take a journey way back to the late 1800s and find out what it was really like and if those glory years of our ancestors was really so glorious. Stay with us on Between the Lines. Welcome to today's program on Between the Lines. We're going to take a journey back to the late 1800s, and that's a fascinating time period for me. And as we take this journey back, we're going to go back with a man who spent his life actually doing a little bit of investigative work on one particular person, W. Prescott. He's written a book about this individual, and Dr. Gil Valentine is the expert. Welcome to our program today.
Thank you. Thank you.
Now, you're writing about an American, but you're from Australia.
That's true.
Yes, you get the award for the guest who's come the farthest to be on this show, from Australia to Washington, D.C.
Well, that's a real privilege.
Yes, so we're traveling back in time with you now.
Uh-huh.
Well, we're fascinated by this book and love a good biography. Tell us a little bit about why you chose to write about Prescott.
Well, I was actually living in the States at the time that I took an interest in Prescott. I was working on my doctorate at Andrews University and discovered that Prescott had quite a bit to do with the establishment of the Adventist education system. So that was how I first became interested in the man. And then once I made that start of exploring about him, I discovered that he'd been involved in a lot of other things besides just Adventist education.
So what kinds of things was he involved in?
He became a significant church leader, an administrator at a very important time in the church's development when it was reorganizing itself. He became the editor of the Review and Herald for quite a time. He was the one who was actually involved in moving the publishing house and the General Conference headquarters from Battle Creek down here to Washington. So he had a significant part to play.
What got you into writing about this type of person? I mean, because you're reaching back, so you obviously had to do some investigative work about the life and times and the culture of the late 1800s.
I was doing my doctoral studies in education, and I'd been working with Dr. George Knight, who is the editor of this series of books. And I think it was just our conversations with Dr. George that really stimulated my interest. And I didn't actually have an interest in denominational history or history prior to that, but something just twigged, and I developed an interest, and I've never let it go. I've enjoyed it ever since.
Well, set the stage for us. What was the world of W. Prescott like?
The church itself was not really developed. It was still growing, and in its organisational structure, it still had a way to go. Education was very new right across America. There were colleges beginning to spring up. Not many young people were going to college until the 1880s, and then there was a huge explosion of young people wanting to get a higher education. And organising that became one of the challenges that Prescott was involved in. So things were fairly basic. Students came from the farms. Transport wasn't easy. Long journeys by train. A lot of hard work. A lot of travelling that he had to do. You know, and the word travel comes from that old English word travail, which means hard work. So it was interesting to see the kind of work that he did. He was president of 3 colleges at once in the late 1800s, and that involved a fair bit of travel.
You know, what's interesting to me that when I think about the times that we're talking about, it was also a period of industrial a building and that kind of thing. Did any of that influence the people like W.W. Prescott in the way that they view the establishment of this new growing denomination?
One of the very important strands in Adventist education at the time was the ability to provide students and young people with skills that they could use in the workplace. Education before that had been largely just rote learning of facts, declensions of Latin verbs and nouns, and just rote learning of ancient languages. Prescott's time focused on students developing skills, manual skills. So at colleges they would learn how to do farming, they would learn how to make equipment.
Was Prescott a man who had a lot of trades himself?
No, he wasn't.
He was
actually
the administrator. And
yeah, he was an
teacher.
administrator. He came from a background. He was a student at Dartmouth College, and was one of the early Adventists with a graduate degree. So he had a master's degree. But he believed very strongly in the dignity of labour, and so he worked very hard at getting a program that would facilitate the development of a curriculum that included practical training.
I like how you call it the dignity of labor. I think today we would probably call him a workaholic, wouldn't we? When someone who's the president of 3 universities at one time.
He had an enormous capacity for work, and that's I've learned to admire him for that.
An incredible work ethic. Did he have time for family?
He found time for family, but I'm sure that he didn't feel he had as much time for family as he would have liked. Had one son whom he lost in the war, actually, First World War. So his life was tinged with sorrow and sadness, and that was one of the sacrifices he had to make.
Did that son ever get married? So did his name ever go on?
No. He joined the Air Force in the First World War and was listed missing in action. His grave is here or at least his memorial stone is in the Rock Creek Cemetery here in Washington. But no record of what happened after that.
Well, you've made a beautiful record of his legacy, so you've paid a nice tribute to him.
Yeah.
We're going to take a break, and when we come back, we'd like to delve a little bit deeper into who W.W. Prescott was as a man and how he managed to juggle all of these 3 colleges at one time and teach students and be the model, obviously the model citizen that he was, not only for the kingdom of God, but also as just a citizen at large. Stay with us. We're talking about the late 1800s today and some pioneers and giants of the Seventh-day Adventist Church.
For more information about any of the books presented today on Between the Lines, visit your local Adventist Book Center or go online at www.adventistbookcenter.com. If you are interested in receiving a copy of today's book and live in the United States and Canada, call 1-800-765-6955. That's 1-800-765-6955.